This is Bot City, and I'm Jet West. Today on the show, Anthropic just shipped Opus 4.8 in 41 days, and we're breaking down why that breakneck pace is actually raising some serious questions about what it means to move that fast in AI development. Anthropic shipped a new flagship model 41 days after the last one. For context, their previous sonnet is 3 months old. Their previous haiku is 7 months old. The normal cadence at this company is measured in quarters. 41 days is not a cadence. 41 days is a correction. The question worth sitting with is not what Opus 4.8 can do. The question is what Opus 4.7 couldn't. And Anthropic would very much prefer you not ask that one. Let's start with what's actually real here, because there is real work in this release, and it deserves a straight look before we get to the corporate math. Opus 4.8 scores 69.2% on SWE-Bench Pro. That benchmark tests models on actual software engineering tasks, multi-file edits, codebase navigation, the kind of work a junior engineer spends most of their day doing. For reference, GPT 5.5 scores 58.6%. Gemini 3.1 Pro scores 54.2%. Anthropic's own Opus 4.7 scored 64.3%. That's not a marginal improvement. Across agentic coding tasks, this is a real, measurable lead over the two most well-resourced competitors in the field. The OS World Verified benchmark, which tests agentic computer use, puts Opus 4.8 at 83.4% versus GPT 5.5's 78.7% and Gemini 3.1 Pro's 76.2%. The GDP Val AA Knowledge Work benchmark has Opus 4.8 at 1890, GPT 5.5 at 1769. There is one benchmark, Terminal Bench 2.1, on agentic terminal coding, where GPT 5.5 leads at 78.2% to Opus 4.8's 74.6%. That gap is worth noting. Across the full picture, though, Anthropic is genuinely ahead of the field on the tasks enterprise customers care most about. The Claude Code capability is a thing I pay attention to if I were building anything in production. According to Anthropic's own launch documentation, Claude Code alongside Opus 4.8 can now carry out code-based scale migrations across hundreds of thousands of lines of code from kickoff to merge, with the existing test suite as the bar. Not a toy repository, not a demo with 20 files, hundreds of thousands of lines, with test coverage as the verification layer. That is a meaningful engineering claim, and if it holds under production conditions, it matters a lot to how software teams work over the next year or two. Dynamic workflows is the other headline feature, coordinating hundreds of parallel subagents on complex tasks. It is shipping as a research preview, which is an honest framing. What the coverage does not tell you is how conflicts between subagents resolve, how errors propagate through a 100 parallel thread system, or what the failure modes look like when one subagent's output is the wrong input for the next 20. These are not hypothetical concerns. They are the engineering questions that determine whether a feature ever leaves preview. The benchmark numbers on agentic tasks are encouraging. The production architecture questions are open. Now, 41 days. Anthropic's messaging frames this release as a planned evolution in agentic capability. The product language is about uncertainty flagging, proactive issue detection, autonomous recovery from errors. TechCrunch's reporting frames it as something else. Opus 4.7 had, quote, a chilly reception, and some users found it disappointing. Those are two very different stories about why a safety-focused lab compressed its release cycle by 4 to 7 times. The Bridgewater Associates testimonial is interesting precisely because of what it reveals. Bridgewater praised Opus 4.8 specifically for its tendency to, quote, proactively flag issues with the inputs and outputs of an analysis, something other models routinely missed and left to the users to catch. That is a useful capability. It is also, if you read it carefully, a description of a problem the previous version had. You do not emphasize proactive issue flagging as a key improvement unless the previous model was leaving things for users to catch. That is not a capability announcement. That is a trust recovery announcement with different branding. The company calling this a planned advancement in agentic capabilities is doing a lot of work with that word planned. The fast mode pricing structure is a separate curiosity. Fast mode delivers approximately 2.5x the speed at 1/3 the cost of standard Opus 4.8. No quality benchmarks are provided comparing the two. No use case guidance distinguishes them. No technical explanation is offered for why the cheaper, faster version exists alongside the more expensive standard version. There are two possible reads. Either fast mode involves quality trade-offs that are not being disclosed, or there is no meaningful quality difference, in which case standard pricing is difficult to justify. The coverage assumes equivalence without testing it. That is a gap worth watching when production reports start coming in. The competitive pressure context matters here too. Between the Opus 4.7 release and today, OpenAI shipped Codex updates and Google shipped Gemini Flash. Both were described as significant. Neither the TechCrunch piece nor the benchmark roundup explain specifically what those releases delivered or whether the 41-day sprint was enough to close or maintain the gap. The benchmark numbers suggest Anthropic came out ahead. The specific context of what they were racing against is just absent. And then there's Mythos. Anthropic's most advanced model had a preview last month. According to TechCrunch, that preview raised cybersecurity concerns. Anthropic's statement on the matter is that they are making swift progress on developing safeguards and expect to bring Mythos-class models to all customers in the coming weeks. That is a holding statement. It says nothing about what the cybersecurity concerns were, who raised them, what capability triggered the concern, or what safeguard development actually looks like for a model described as the company's most advanced. For a company whose founding premise is that the most advanced models are also the most dangerous, the response to a cybersecurity flag on your most advanced model is probably the most important thing happening at Anthropic right now. The coverage treats it as a footnote. The coming weeks language will age. Either Mythos ships with safeguards intact and the concerns were manageable, or the weeks stretch into months and the concerns were not. Given that Anthropic just demonstrated it can ship a corrective release in 41 days when it has to, the timeline for Mythos will tell you something about whether the cybersecurity issue is a branding problem or a real one. Taka has claimed the reading chair again. I notice this every time I sit down to work through a story that has a PR narrative running in parallel to a factual one. The chair is warmer than the desk, which is either coincidence or the cat has better taste than I do. The SWE-Bench lead is real. The agentic coding capability is real. The codebase migration claim, if it holds in production, is the most operationally significant thing in this release. Anthropic built something genuinely better than what they had 41 days ago, and genuinely better than what their two main competitors have right now on the tasks that matter to the customers paying for enterprise AI. What they built it in response to, and what they're holding back in Mythos, and what exactly broke in Opus 4.7 that required a 4 to 7 times acceleration of their normal release cycle. None of that is in the press release. None of that is in the coverage. And all of it tells you more about where Anthropic actually is than the benchmark table does. The trust problem is not whether Opus 4.8 can migrate a code base. The trust problem is whether a company that shipped a disappointing model 41 days ago is holding its most advanced model over unspecified security concerns and has not explained what went wrong the first time. That company is asking enterprise customers to run hundreds of parallel subagents on production code. The benchmark numbers make the case for the model. The 41 days makes the case for staying curious about everything else.
I'm Jet West in Bot City. Keep bussin'.
Grab news. Thomas.